Jaya Gopi Jana Vallabha Giribharadhari Jashodanandana Braja Jana Ranjana Jamuna Tira Vanachari Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari Jayam Vishnupat Paramahansa Parivrajacharya Ashtotarashata Srimad His Divine Grace A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Srila Prabhupada Ki Jayam Vishnupat Paramahansa Parivrajacharya Ashtotarashata Srimad His Divine Grace Bhakti Siddhanta Saraswati Goswami Maharaj Srila Prabhupada Ki Ananta Koti Vaishnava Vrinda Ki ISKCON Founder Acharya Srila Prabhupada Ki Grantarashman Bhagavatam Ki Nitai Gaura Premanandi. Oh, glory to the assembled devotees. Oh, glory to the assembled devotees. Oh, glory to the assembled devotees. Oh, glory to Shishiguru and Shigoranga. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Reading from Srimad Bhagavatam, Canto 10, Chapter 57, Satyajit murder, the Jew return. Text 17 and 16 and 17. Ja saptaha jana shailam upatyeke napanina dadhara lilaja bala uchilindram ibarbakha Jasaptaha jana shailam utpatyeke napanina dadhara lilaja bala uchilindran ibarbhaka Jasaptaha jana shailam utpatyeke napanina dadhara lilaja bala uchilindran ibarbhaka. Please chant. Yaha Hu Shapta 7 Hajanaha years of age Shailam a mountain Utpatya uprooting Ekena with a single Panina hand Dadhara held up Leelaya as a play Balaha a mere child Uchilindram a mushroom Iva as Arbakaha a boy. Translation by the disciples of His Divine Grace A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Srila Prabhupada. As a child of 7, Krishna uprooted an entire mountain and held it aloft as easily as a young boy pick up a mushroom. Text number 17. Namastaismai Bhagavate Krishnaya Bhuta Karmane Ananta Yadi Bhutaya Kutashta Yatmane Namaha. I offer my obeisances to that Supreme Personality of Godhead, Krishna, whose every deed is amazing. He is the Supreme Soul, the unlimited source and fixed center of all existence. Om Jnana Timirandasya Jnananjana Shalakaya Chakshur Ummilitam Yena Tasmai Sri Guruve Namaha. Namo Om Vishnupadaya Krishna Prestaya Bhutale Srimate Romapada Swami Iti Namine. Namo Om Vishnupadaya Krishna Prestaya Bhutale Srimate Bhaktivedanta Swami Iti Namine. Namaste Saraswate Deve Gauravani Pracharine Nirvishesha Shunyavadi Pashatyadeshatarine Vanchakalpa Tarubhyascha Kripa Sindhubhyaevacha Patitanam Pavanebhyo Vaishnavebhyo Namo Namaha. Today is the appearance day of His Divine Grace Srila Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Goswami Maharaj. So we're going to be glorifying him a little later, offering Pushpanjali ceremony and narrating some of the glories of Srila Bhaktisiddhanta. So it's a very auspicious day today, especially to take shelter and seek the mercy and the blessings of Srila Bhaktisiddhanta. One of the important aspects that we learn in, or what is demonstrated here by Akura, is the understanding of Krishna in truth. It's called Krishna in Tattva, Krishna Tattva, to have a full understanding of the truth of Krishna. This is a subject matter that is discussed by Krishna in the Bhagavad Gita in chapter 4. The chapter is entitled Divya Gyan, or Transcendental Knowledge. And when Krishna, in a nutshell, defined what transcendental knowledge is, he said that it simply comprised when we have a full understanding of the divinity of Krishna's appearance in this world and his activities in this world. Jamma karma chame divyam evan yo veti Tattvataha. This word tattva means to know in truth, to fully know. Srila Prabhupada in the, well, Krishna himself, he established in this chapter how this transcendental knowledge descends into this world, how it's received, how it's transmitted. This transcendental knowledge comes from the Supreme Personality of Godhead. And the Supreme Personality of Godhead delivers this transcendental knowledge into this world. And the means by which this transcendental knowledge reaches all people of the world is by the change of disciplic succession. So that's a via media. So Krishna established that right in the beginning of the fourth chapter, Evam parampara praptam iman rajar shajo vidhu, that this supreme science, eternal science of the understanding of the Supreme Personality of God, this divya gyan, this divine knowledge that becomes delivered through the unbroken change of disciplic succession, parampara. And that's how it's received and has been received through the ages, through the agent, of bona fide spiritual master or representative of Krishna. And Krishna explains that this transcendental knowledge, that Krishna explains that the representative, those bona fide spiritual masters, he defined them as such. He says that for someone to be in that position, he has to be a tattvadarshi. Tattvadarshi, the word darshi comes from darshana. When we take darshan, we see when we come in front of the Lord, we take in darshan. The translation for darshan is that we have an audience. So, Tattvadarsha is someone who have audience of the absolute truth, who actually understood the absolute truth. So we have to approach such person to receive this understanding. And Krishna explains that when we approach a spiritual master, there have to be these three elements in place. Pariprashnena sevaya. So that we have to approach such a tattvadarshi spiritual master in a submissive mood. And it's very significant because to be able to receive this transcendental knowledge, we have to fully place ourselves under the instructions, the care, the discipline, and be totally submissive to the instructions of the spiritual master. So submissiveness, and then we have to ask questions. We have to be inquisitive. Inquisitive is for the purpose of using our intelligence and discerning capacity to try to fully understand those instructions, to understand it thoroughly. So like that, we must ask questions to clarify if we have doubts, to have it very, very clear. And the last one is that we have to render service. So submissiveness, inquiries, and service. These three elements must be there. Cannot be compromised or have two and not one like that. They all have to be present. If one is missing, then it's not going to work. The situation is not going to be um, um, there's going to be a blockage in receiving that transcendental knowledge if one of those elements are not there. There's remember um, there was a very um, not funny, but how you say when someone is very um, funny when he speak. What's the word? Hmm. Well, anyway, there was this Maharaj who was very amusing, when he presented the philosophy. It was very entertaining. And his name was Vipramukya Maharaj. Back in time in Brooklyn, he was one of the resident sannyasis in the early 1980s there in New York. And it was very funny. Anyway, just a sidetrack. Um, he used to give Bhagavatam classes that everybody was just rolling in the floor, uh, just laughing. He will describe the different styles of chanting. So you have a name for the different styles of chanting of the devotees. So is the the radar style. So he goes like Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, like that. And then he will be then the Dracula style. Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, like cover like that. And it will be the dropping bomb style. Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna. And then he got a whole list of styles of chanting. It was just very funny. So he had this story of these three elements that must be there. So Pariprasnena Sevaya, that suppose the devotee is submissive and does inquiry, but he doesn't do seva. So it will be like, Hare Krishna, Guru Maharaj ki jai. Guru Maharaj, your lotus feet are the most, worshipful thing. What can I do, Guru Maharaj? Can I serve you? And you can bring me a cup of water. Hare Krishna, Guru Maharaj, thank you so much. Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna. Don't. So that's not good. So then you are inquisitive, you do service, but you're not submissive. Glory to Guru Maharaj, Hare Krishna, how can I serve you? Please bring me a cup of water. Okay. And then you bring a cup of milk, because milk is better than water. So that's not good. And then Bhimarbhunka Maharaj explains, like that. Then you have submissive service, but not inquiry. So you Hare Krishna Guru Maharaj ki jai, and then you bring a cup of milk, just like that, because you think milk, purpose, it is said that it's good for the brain or whatever, concoction or whatever thing you may think. You perform a service, but it's not necessarily what the spiritual master is expecting or wanted or things like that. So therefore, these three things have to be present in order to receive transcendental knowledge from the spiritual master. And then, in the next verse, so this is chapter 4, text number 34, that Krishna explains that just approach a spiritual master. how's it go? The beginning. Um, oh, I can't remember right now. But in text number 35, he says, what the spiritual master, when he's pleased with your sincerity and by following the proper instructions in a submissive way and with proper inquiry, um, by being pleased, then he delivers to you the understanding that you are Krishna's, that you are an eternal part and parcel of Krishna, eternal servitor of Krishna. So, in other words, the spiritual master delivers to you this transcendental knowledge. So, the importance of transcendental knowledge is exemplified here. How someone who is in fully understanding. So Akrura was such a personality that have a complete, perfect understanding of Krishna's position. Perfect understanding that all these amazing leelas, pastimes of the Lord, they are sublime and transcendental in nature and are simply the pastimes of the Lord that are performed to actually, Srila Prabhupada explains that these leelas of the Lord are meant to attract the conditioned souls to his lotus feet because they're so incredibly wonderful and with full of attractive qualities in relationships, uh, in superhuman. Anyway, is just very wonderful, the activities of the Lord. When you don't have transcendental knowledge, then you derive these activities, and in general, the ignorant conditions living entity will say something like this when come in contact with the activities of the Lord. Oh, they are just simply mythology or some sort of invention of someone's imagination and things like that. What is a 7-year-old lifting a whole mountain? So it's not possible. It's not possible. But Akrura was not a fool. Akrura was a highly educated personality, qualified, minister and part of the royalty of the whole Jadu dynasty, a very, very high dynasty. And he could understand that these activities are wonderful and therefore I worship Krishna. Therefore, I understand him as the Supreme Personality of Godhead. In one sense, you can see and understand how is that Akrura make the choices that he made throughout, his whole the narrations of the Leela of the Lord. How Akrura remain in Mathura while Kamsa was there, as has been pointed out throughout, that he was constantly meditating and waiting for the time, understanding Krishna is this. He had perfect understanding. Krishna is the Supreme Personality of Godhead, and he will appear. And then when that happens, he will be able to have that darshan and to serve him. So he was fully waiting for that moment. And when the moment came, he was in great ecstasy, which is demonstrated in the whole narration when Akrura reaches Vrindavan. So we have perfect understanding of Krishna's position. An understanding of Krishna's position, when you have an understanding of God, what is a tiny demon going to do to God? It's not, nothing is going to happen. It's going to be taken care. Similarly to another Vaikunthavasi, like Narada Muni. Narada Muni has perfect understanding of Krishna, and therefore Narada Muni was doing all these arrangements to push Kansa to, appear, that Narada Muni was encouraged this demoniac fellow to commit even more, heinous and demoniac acts. But the fact is that he had an understanding of Krishna's position. So when Akrura agrees to come and bring Krishna to Mathura, he had no doubts that something was going to happen to Krishna. What can happen to God? He had full understanding. Different than the inhabitants of Vrindavan, and different than people who by their condition, their material condition, could not see Krishna as he is, didn't have transcendental knowledge. The inhabitants of Vrindavan have full transcendental knowledge, but that knowledge is covered by Yoga Maya. We know that. And therefore, they don't see Krishna as God. And they were there when Krishna was lifting the mountain. But they somehow or other cannot connect that, oh my God, have to be God. Who else can do that? So, but they don't see. They don't see. By Yoga Maya, they think, oh well, it was somehow the Lord Vishnu is doing something underneath the whole scene and helping us here. So they don't see. And people who are devoid of transcendental knowledge, in the case of here we have Satadvanda, who is devoid of transcendental knowledge, covered by their desire for sense gratification. In the Bhagavad Gita, Krishna explains who are those people who are not able to have the type of intelligence to be able to discern between transcendence and ignorance, vidya and avidya. And Krishna explains that people who are afflicted by these two things, bhoga and aishwarya, the desire for sense gratification and the desire to control material nature. So for those people, the intelligence that is required to understand transcendence, it doesn't take place. So when someone is like that, too absorbed in this bhoga and aishwarya, or afflicted too much by that, then you can have the proper understanding to see Krishna as he is. As he is. So Sattadandva, he was very attached. And we're going to read later also how even in the position of understanding, he is going to be killed by Krishna. He's fearing for his life, but he's still holding to that jewel. And although he gives this jewel to Akrura, it's not that he's saying, here, I give it to you. No, he say, please hold it for me, basically. He doesn't want, He wasn't give up that. He's still attached to the whole um, wealth and the whole benefits of the Jew. Um, so transcendental knowledge doesn't take place when that um, type of condition is there. There is something also very interesting to point out because, in one sense, there is a there's a statement that Prabhupada makes when describing the three types of devotees. Because here we are devotees, we accept Krishna as the personality of Godhead, and we endeavoring right now to serve Krishna and to follow Krishna's system, Krishna's instruction. So, in the beginning, Prabhupada said there's these three types of devotees: the neophyte, the or the third class devotee, the second class devotee, and the first class devotee. He describes them like that. So, the third class devotee, he explains that we become attractive by the worship of the deities, by or in the beginning we may be searching for some relief from some difficult situations in the material world that we may be experiencing, either with economical situation, or even situations of that um, we find we find ourselves in some miserable situation. So we approach the Lord for relief. Or we can approach the Lord for inquisitiveness because we want to understand something. We're looking for alternatives. So we're looking for alternative because we don't experience satisfaction in the world. So we're trying to find means to be happy. So there is an ulterior motive, or it's a mixed motive when we come to Krishna consciousness. So those are considered third class devotees, not to be taken lightly, because Krishna said they're very dear to me. So, anyone who comes to Krishna, they're very dear to Krishna. But Srila Prabhupada explains that we have to move from third class to second class to be qualified to receive transcendental knowledge. And that's something very significant. It's in the purport of first canto, chapter 2, text number 12. That Prabhupada explains like that. To be able to receive transcendental knowledge, to have the qualification, we have to move to the second class devotee. And he defines the second class devotee as someone who sees four things very clearly. Who is God? So have a strong understanding of the philosophy. Who is a devotee? Is able to understand and appreciate the devotees. Who is, he called innocent, basically a conditioned soul that is open to, or is in search, or is open to receive transcendental knowledge. and who is demoniac. So these four things. And demoniac, so in the second class devotees, you can make distinctions. But you have the proper capacity to make distinctions because you have a strong grasp of the philosophy. In that position, that is a symptom that you see these four things, that you're able to actually start to absorb transcendental knowledge. In the third class that many of us find ourselves, and how do we know which class we are? Well, as long as we're still struggling with our material conditioning, meaning the nature, that this body dictates, as long as I'm conditioned, as long as I'm still struggling with my false ego, meaning that I become elated or I become disturbed by external things, and my actions and my thinking and all my being becomes affected, then I can understand I'm still, within this category. As long as it manifests some attachments and desires, and those things are basically uh, propelling our actions, or mix, all the things is mixed with the things that we do that are important, then I'm in the third class devotee. And understanding where I am is very important to be able to move to where I want to be. Because it will be very difficult to move. If I'm in the third class position, to move to the second class will be difficult if I'm thinking I'm in the second class or even in the first class. Sometimes we see that. Sometimes we see devotees thinking and acting like, I'm past the the level of neophyte, and now I'm in this position of purity and an elevation. So it will be difficult to actually eliminate or become free from the unwanted things that happens or that are present during the beginning of devotional service. So the main feature or the main element that is there when we are in this position of mixed devotional service is this process that Srila Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur described as anartha nivriti, which is the cleansing of the unwanted things from within the heart. And the activities of anartha nivriti are highly accelerated by following the process of sadhana bhakti, and especially with these elements of the chanting of the holy names and the hearing of and worship in the Srimad Bhagavatam. And through all of that, we have to have this very, very close relationship of submissiveness, service, and inquiry to the spiritual master. When we ask for the spiritual master or when we inquire to the spiritual master, we try to be fully honest in presenting our situation. So we can speak freely and we can say, I'm going through this, I'm having this, I'm deciding this. I absolutely don't understand your instruction, so I want to understand it. All these things are there. My doubts, my difficulties. So all the things are presented. Perfect example is Arjuna. If we read the Bhagavad Gita carefully, Arjuna is telling Krishna, I'm going through this terrible anxiety. My body is trembling. I'm not able to hold my bow. I can't take it. I cannot take this whole situation. It's beyond me. So Arjuna throughout all the inquiries that he have in the beginning, I don't understand your instructions. They appear to be contradictory. So Arjuna is questioning Krishna and questioning Krishna's instructions, but he's doing it in a submissive way. And what is submissive? That whatever Krishna will say, Arjuna will follow. He's trusting Krishna. He said to Krishna that you please instruct me. I become your disciple, should you please instruct me? So whatever Krishna said, then Arjuna will follow. And at the end, Krishna said, I have explained all this to you. Now you choose. And Arjuna showed, yes, I'm choosing to be your instrument. So that's the perfect example of master and disciple. So when we inquire, it's not to find some confirmation of what we want to do. When we inquire is to actually find out that how I can do, what is the right thing for me to do. Take it into consideration my nature. Because when Arjuna asked Krishna all these questions in the second chapter, when Arjuna say, I don't know what to do, I'm perplexed about all the things that are presented in front of me. I don't know what is the right thing because I have these two very conflicting things that are important in terms of my duties and, moral, religious, all this. In one hand, I have to fulfill my duty to protect society, and in the other hand is killing all my family. So I'm totally perplexed. So therefore, I'm come to you in a submissive way. I surrender to you, become your disciple. You please instruct me. So we're not in that terrible situation that is, like really up there in terms of, circumstances, difficult circumstances like Arjuna, but we may find ourselves in so many crossroads in which we have to make a choice. Could it be this? Could it be this? And, I'm perplexed about where to go. So that's that's the inquiry that we have to the spiritual master. And the spiritual master will say, you go this way. Now, mind that it was clear by Arjuna's presentation that he was opening to Krishna his own attachments. In one sense, well, Arjuna is an eternal servitor of the Lord. So he's up there. He is not like us, but he's playing that part by Krishna's desire. So the important principle is that Arjuna is making it clear that he is invested. He is invested in family. He is investing in you know kingly duties. He's investing in all these things. So Krishna didn't recommend Arjuna to renounce all that. Krishna gave Arjuna a process by which he will be able to elevate himself what acting through whatever his nature is. It's Krishna who gives that, and as a master, as a spiritual master, and Arjuna as a disciple, he allowed Krishna to direct him. So that's the means of receiving this transcendental knowledge. And that's what Akrura is demonstrating here. So anyway, some of realizations on this subject matter. Any comments or questions? Adeline, just get the microphone. Can get the microphone here?
Hare Krishna. So I just have a question in regards to spiritual master and disciple relationship. So how would we rectify ourselves if we don't follow our spiritual master's instructions properly, or if we make a mistake? Like how do we rectify or go about that?
I would rectify if we make a mistake.
Yeah.
Well, the spiritual master is very kind, and he, as a representative of Krishna, is representing the kindness of Krishna too. So if we make a mistake, we have to do the show of rectification is that we actually act in changing whatever we have done. And in one sense, we can ask the spiritual master, how can I rectify? What steps should I take? The first thing is recognizing, and that's once you do that, once you recognize, oh, I made a mistake, then that's great mercy. Then that's a proper disciple. Because we're going to make mistakes after mistakes after mistakes. And the spiritual master is very kind, understanding your nature. That sometimes he will not chastise you, because if he knows that if he chastises you, you're going to be, it's going to increase your bewilderment. Sometimes he will chastise you because you're a little more mature, so you're able to take that chastisement. I remember I shared with you when I was a new devotee. I have this very wonderful relationship with my spiritual master, and he was always very, very kind with me. And then in the beginning, there was only few of us, so we had a lot of association. And besides, my spiritual master was a station, or was a resident sannyasi in the temple, in the Brooklyn temple where I'm joined. So I landed in this position of being like part of his crew. So I was one of his servants. But I was very immature. as a young devotee. So I will drive him when we go to programs. So he started to organize this yearly. Actually, it's going to happen this year again. So it's been happening from 1986 without stopping. Only 1 year stopped during the COVID time. This retreat in the farm, Gitanagari farm in Pennsylvania. So I would drive him and I would be his servant there. He was one of the organizers and the teachers. So he asked me to clean his room. And, I say yes, obviously, okay. But then I got so absorbed in the classes and the kirtans and the thing that I forgot. And then at the end of the day, I come and then I see he's cleaning his room. And he asked me, "Did I ask you to clean my room?" And I say, "Oh, Maharaj, I forgot." I was a little nonchalant about it, a little embarrassed, but, not really like, "Oh my God, this is, it's quite bad." And he chastised me. He say, "Please don't forget next time," very sweetly. And, so I helped him a little bit, but, he was cleaning along with me. Then next boo-boo, I got, again, super absorbed in the classes. It was these amazing classes. And I have to, there's final tests for these particular courses. So, of course, I was cramming through the night and went to bed super late and Mongol so I slept very little, like maybe 2 hours or something like that. And the next day, at the end, of lunch, I have to drive him back to New York, about 2.5 hours driving. And of course, as I start drive, I was, falling asleep. And then he say, "Stop the car, sit in the passenger. He's going to drive." And he usually will be very, inquire to me how you did and this and that, and any questions and things like that. This time he was silent. He didn't say anything. So he didn't chastise me, but he showed there was something that he got to me that I understood. So I promised myself to be more careful. So the instruction, the spiritual master is there, and the spiritual master is so expert in being able to help you. If you're sincere, we make mistakes because we're immature, we're like this, our mind, we're mixed and this and that. But if we're sincere, then the spiritual master will find ways to instruct you according to your nature, according to the way that you can take it, and it will help you. But you have to have that faith in this person. You have to have that faith. If you have doubts, or if you think, "Oh, no, the spirit, he doesn't understand me, and therefore I won't be able to explain this to him," then it's not going to happen. So when that time comes, you can pray to Krishna. It's the most important relationship that you're going to have in this lifetime. It's the most important relationship. So you can jump into a relationship of such a magnitude, like, blindly. You have to really be waiting, praying to Krishna to please lead you to the lotus feet of your spiritual master. And prepare yourself for that wonderful relationship. Because when it happens, it's like a huge thing comes out of your back. So it's a very beautiful thing. Any other thing?
We see a lot of examples of like when Srila Prabhupada was here and he would give like direct instructions to some of his disciples, but then there were other disciples that didn't necessarily get that direct contact with him, so they weren't getting direct instructions.
Yeah,
So
plenty of that.
yeah,
There were so many.
so when we have spiritual masters where we may not get so much close association as our senior god siblings and god siblings do, then how can we understand what that instruction is?
Yeah, my spiritual master, he tells us that he have very limited association with Srila Prabhupada. Um, he served Srila Prabhupada, he's playing mostly in separation. So he will get the instructions, a lot of his instruction from Prabhupada's letters, from Prabhupada's lectures, and from Prabhupada's books. And he was so focused on he was so open for that at the end very little was needed. Oh no, I'm going to reframe that. Um, that is not about either one or the other. To have association is better than to have that doesn't define it, because we saw certain devotees who have so much association with Srila Prabhupada at one point develop some difficulties and they're gone. So the association is not the defining part, that that you have so much direct uh, instructions and guidance, but is where your heart and your faith is. So if I am if I have faith in this personality, then the instruction will come, the understanding will come. I was just reading Indra's book. Indra was this very um, amazing Prabhupada disciple who changed the whole course of how kirtan is now done. His life was dedicated for kirtan, and he said that basically he only have one exchange with Srila Prabhupada, and Prabhupada just it was in a moment that he was leading, Prabhupada was arriving to Washington, and Andrew was chanting. Someone gave it, hit him Mardanga, you play, and chant. So he was doing it with so sincerity that Prabhupada stopped, look at him, and say, Hari Bol. That's all. That's all oh no, he say Jaya. He say Jaya. And that's all he ever heard from Srila Prabhupada directly to him. But that Jaya defined his whole devotional life. That Jaya to his kirtan meant that Prabhupada was directing him to kirtan. And of course, it's not that he fills the blanks, but through Prabhupada's instructions in the books, through Prabhupada's representative in the temples, to all these different things, then you're able to understand. So it's about faith, but that's what will define the thing. So that's why we're preparing ourselves. It's Krishna's system. We have to have that faith. We have to prepare ourselves for that faith. So therefore, you have to be you have to allow that to happen, as you surrender to your spiritual master. That, that person, like I remember when I made the choice to surrender to my Guru Maharaj, there were a lot of, obviously, in our ISKCON world, there's so many amazing personalities. But to me, it was, well, you know, this person is is has put so much effort and attention towards myself. There's no doubt, that is helping me in this way. So, for me, it was a very easy choice, but it was natural. It came from me. Anything else?
I have one more question. Oh,
Go ahead.
Archana wants to.
Go ahead. Go ahead.
And this one's just kind of brief, but you were speaking about Narada Muni and how Narada Muni had perfect understanding and knowledge of Krishna, the absolute truth. And in the Bhagavad Gita, there's this like contradiction that comes up, and I don't know the exact verses. I know one of them's in the seventh chapter, but where Krishna gives all these ways in which we can understand him in complete, in entirety. But then he also says in the Bhagavad Gita that no one knows him in full. And so, is it that that's true, or like within that contradiction, is it that like certain liberated souls can know Krishna in full, but then like because we're in this material world, we can't?
Yeah. Prabhupada explains that, is when you speak about unlimited, the dynamic nature of this unlimited world, so, and ever expanding. So, so there is this competition about knowing Krishna and not knowing Krishna. So, because he's ever expanding his glories, so at this moment I know Krishna, but then the next moment Krishna's glories expand, so I don't fully know Krishna. And then when I get to know that, like that, it's all the different features of Krishna have that aspect. Krishna's beauty, it's like that. So it is plain that, the gopis, they they become really happy by seeing Krishna's beauty, and their beauty increases just by that happiness. And then when Krishna sees their beauty increasing, then his happiness increase and his beauty increase. So then there's this dynamic movement that it goes unlimited. So Krishna's glories are like that. So you never be able to catch up because they're uh, constantly expanding unlimitedly. So so it's like that. Narada is um, is a Shaktiavesh avatar described, meaning that it's a living entity that is being fully empowered by the Lord. So I think it is described that he has a Bhakti Shaktikam. Um, um, in Lord Chaitanya's pastime, Narada Muni appears as Srinivasacharya. So, so he is empowered with the bhakti potency, and therefore, he have full knowledge of that area. And in the case of Krishna's pastime, he was so tuned in with Krishna's pastimes that, he did all this. He basically orchestrated certain things for Krishna's pastime to accelerate, because he was pretty much understanding of what needed to be done way in advance. So pretty much tune in, with Krishna's desires.
I was just reflecting on the, you were describing something of your relationship with your spiritual master, and there's, I'm understanding a certain shift from being familiar or comfortable to being more conscious and reserved and thoughtful. So the attitude of Arjuna, it had a lot to do with viewing Krishna in a kind of familiar way, as a friend.
It's true.
And then he had to shift that mood of familiarity to one of a certain kind of deference to the position of Krishna.
Right.
So it's interesting. It seems that there's an ongoing kind of growth that has to do with understanding more deeply the position of the spiritual master.
Yes. And the relationship too. Yes. Thank you. Yes, with Arjuna, it's like that. And he, even in the Bhagavad Gita, laments, when he sees Krishna's universal form. He say, I used to sit down with you in the bed, and joke around and this and that. But here you are, the source of everything, the personality of Godhead. I accept you like that. So, yes. So, I think when transcendental knowledge start to become more, you start to little by little maturing a little more, things become more clear of how to properly act within the process of Krishna consciousness. So, but again, I just keep thinking, just when I read that we have to move to that second platform to be able to qualify. Let me see if I find it. I think it's just quite something. Yeah, here it is. Such a devotee must be represented. I read this and I finish. Is that okay? We're like little, over the time. But it's fasting day, so I think it's quite wonderful. The verse translates like this. It's 1 to 12. The seriously inquisitive student or sage, well equipped with knowledge and detachment, realizes the absolute truth by rendering devotional service in terms of what he has heard from the Vedanta Shruti. Prabhupada's purport. The absolute truth is realized in full by the process of devotional service to the Lord Vasudeva, or the personality of Godhead, who is the full-fledged absolute truth. Brahman is his transcendental bodily effulgence, and Paramatma is his partial representation. As such, Brahman or Paramatma realization of the absolute truth is but a partial realization. There are four different types of human beings: the karmis, the jnanis, the yogis, and the devotees. The karmis are materialistic, whereas the other three are transcendental. The first class transcendentalists are the devotees who have realized the Supreme Person. The second class transcendentalists are those who have partially realize the plenary portion of the Absolute Truth. And the third class transcendentalists are those who have barely realized the spiritual focus of the Absolute Person. As stated in the Bhagavad Gita and other Vedic literatures, the Supreme Person is realized by devotional service, which is backed by full knowledge and detachment from material association. We have already discussed the point that devotional service is followed by knowledge and detachment from material association. As Brahman and Paramatma realization, well, it goes like this. Let me go back to the... There are three classes of devotees, namely first, second, and third class. The third class devotees, or neophytes, who have no knowledge and are not detached from material association, but who are simply attracted by the preliminary process of worshipping the deity in the temple, are called material devotees. Material devotees are more attached to material benefit than transcendental profit. Therefore, one has to make definite progress from the position of material devotional service to the second class devotional position. In the second class position, the devotee can see four principles in the devotional line, namely the personality of Godhead, his devotees, the ignorant, and the envious. One has to raise himself at least to the stage of a second class devotee and thus become eligible to know the absolute truth. Adios. So, second class devotee means Madhyama Adhikari. According to Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur, 75% of the unwanted things within the heart are cleansed. So, therefore, now the toggle war between my material desires or my unwanted things and my devotional things is over, because 75% against 25% is a clear win for the devotional part. There's no match. So therefore, that second class position is called nishta. Nishta means that it's steady. So devotional service now becomes steady. In the neophyte, devotional service is called anishtata, which means unsteady. Sometimes we're good, sometimes we're struggle. Sometimes we're strong, sometimes we struggle. So, that's what we have to try very hard. All right, stop here. Garantara Srimad Bhagavatam ki jai.